environmental quality. So I understand all of that, and I understand that we have to have a system that runs well. But, you know, I think there's good questions about privatization and what it's done to us. I don't think it's been good in the long run, or in this so far into it. It's not really to the long run, and I understand that that's what you're claiming, Mr. Huckleberry. And the changes that we've made to accounting and human resources probably give us a more accurate view of things. But that's hard for our ratepayers to understand. That's not easy, and that's what I'm saying. We had one public hearing, and I don't know how many people showed up. Anybody over there know?
Supervisor Elias, at our first public meeting, we had 3 members of the public, and at our most recent second follow-up meeting, we had 2 members of the public.
Right, so somehow we have to do a better job of getting that word out there. It's important to have those public hearings, but we also have to have sound mechanisms for getting the word out so that people do understand what we're doing. I'm sorry, thank you for indulging me in those moments, Supervisor Valadez and Chair Bronson.
Mr. Huckleberry had wanted to respond to the campuses. Did you want to respond now or wait for Supervisor Valadez's question?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Mr. Huckleberry. I remember sitting here when we had talked about funding ROMP and how the alternatives were frankly as bad as the rate increase caused by the ROMP plan were even more heinous. And I think we made the right choice at that time, and that dealt really with the not the interceptors, but rather the treatment facility and what we were required to do by the federal government. So let's make it very, very clear, and I think it needs to be clear. ROMP was about the treatment facility and a requirement that was being placed on us by the federal government, and the option was we would have to do it anyway, and on top of that have a federal fee if we didn't do it as a penalty. But I think what we also need to consider is, and Christopher and I had a conversation before the meeting, and I find myself quoting Christopher a great deal. But the truth is that prior to ROMP, we as a county, Mr. Huckleberry, what kind of investment did we make in preventative care of the interceptor system?
Madam Chair and Supervisor Valadez, I think it was sporadic. We had a couple of big projects that we pushed. Santa Cruz Interceptor was one because of the eventual quote at the time, the clamor that downtown would develop and we needed to have the capacity. So I think in the Santa Cruz Interceptor we probably put in $60 million. And then there's been a few others, obviously the repair of the collapse. And there's some debate about what caused the collapse, but that's here and there, it's behind us. And I think, you know, the other point, and we can pull this information up because it's fairly easy to find, is the historic rate increases from year to year, and that prior to ROMP, they were relatively non-existent. They tended to be much more, we'll say, favorable to the user and higher to the new connector. And we can give you 20 years of that history that shows you prior to ROMP they were very low, and at ROMP when we began to undertake this process we indicated, we predicted, and this board approved 10% annual rate increases, which was significant, a very significant act as compared to what we've previously done.
Right, and I'd be very interested in seeing that in a memo form, Mr. Huckleberry, but tied into what kind of preventative maintenance was being done. I think what we fail to see pre-ROMP is that the investment that we made in terms of that kind of infrastructure was nil. So we didn't need to do any increases because frankly we weren't doing much. I remember that one of my first State of the Counties dealt with public infrastructure, and that was a point that I made because we weren't spending, and that was what, 2005, 2006. So we've had a shift in philosophy, unfortunately because of a traumatic event that happened in District 5, but a realization that we either invest or we're going the cost of doing maintenance during an emergency situation is just ridiculously high. Let me ask this, and I'm not sure, Mr. Colbert, if you're the correct person to ask, or Mr. Jenkins. My question is, you're coming before this board and asking for an increase over the next 3 years of 4% annually. What has happened in the department in terms of cost cutting? Because obviously, if we're your first option, the first option needs to be, what have you cut in your budget that makes this more palatable to our constituents and our ratepayers?
Madam Chair and Supervisor Valadez, let Jackson answer that question.
Chair Bronson, Supervisor Valadez. There's a number of things, and I'm sure I won't remember all of them at this particular moment, but when we talk about the energy costs, maintaining our energy costs at this relatively flat level is incredible in the environment of increasing electrical rates. I think that's been a very diligent cost savings effort. It takes a lot of staff time and effort to review what tariffs we should be on. It's not like you go shopping and you pick, hey, I want this rate per kilowatt hour or that rate per kilowatt hour. It's a very detailed evaluation of numerous components of your electric bill that determine what's the optimum amount. And now that we have, as Mr. Sherlock talked about, this SCADA system and all these 40,000 input and outputs, we can see real-time data that help contribute in the calculation of determining the best tariff to be on for electric rates, and thus keeping our energy costs as low as possible. It's a big focus of ours. So we continue. I think we've saved a lot of money in the energy environment, and we will continue to do so with the tools that we now have. We've reduced staffing, even if you include the contract services of the firm that operates the new Agua Nueva facility. They have a staff of 17. Over the past 5 years, we've reduced our staffing by 42 people, not counting those 17. You could say it's a net 23 or 24 people that we've reduced. We have more to do than ever, but we're being more efficient. We've added a lot more process control and automation. Labor and benefits, wages and benefits are our highest single cost, so focusing on trying to be as efficient with the staffing level is very important, and I think we've done quite well in that arena. We've shut down Randolph Park facility, one of our smaller facilities that was quite expensive. That's saved us quite a bit of money. Here's one, I'm hoping I didn't have to get into this, it's a little bit technical for me to even explain, but in the ROMP we made a conscious decision not to add aqueous ammonia, a chemical additive needed in our disinfection process. It saved us quite a bit of capital money. The designer said we would need it in order not to make a disinfection byproduct that is on our permit list to not produce. We thought we were going to be smarter than the designer and how we added chlorine to disinfect our effluent. Well, in the long and short of it, they were right. We were making the trihalomethane byproduct, and so rather than go back and now put in that aqueous ammonia system, staff came up with the idea that the regulatory mandate is for us to remove ammonia. So if we're removing ammonia, why would we go buy ammonia to add to the process? So we found one of our waste streams. We take a small amount of our waste stream that we clean, and we use that ammonia that comes into the system to add to our chlorine process. And we've saved ourselves millions of dollars by implementing that in-house with in-house ideas and our own staff to put in the piping and plumbing system, and I think that's a phenomenal story to tell. If I could tell it without all the technical details with it, it would be a wonderful story to tell, but it saved us quite a bit of money, and we're continuing to look at those type of opportunities in everything that we do.
Thank you, Mr. Jackson. Mr. Agobert, I'd like to make sure that in the memo where you're talking about our history, we also indicate the cost-cutting measures that we talked about and get a more complete list as well.
Yes, Madam Chair, and I think of all the issues that have been brought up by the board, we're going to respond to, we need to get you the factual information on all those issues that each member's brought up.
Thank you.
Madam Chair?
Let me just follow up on
Okay.
yours because it relates to cost. So these are cost savings you've actually incurred, or these are cost savings that are real now at this point in time. The department also provides services that are non-mandated. I guess in that memo that Supervisor Valadez has asked you to develop, if you could indicate the non-mandated services and the cost of the non-mandated services, and that may be another way to reduce the increases, but I know you have non-mandated services, and so I'd like to see that in the mix. Supervisor Valadez.
Madam Chair, another point that I want to address, and again, I'm not really sure who the appropriate person, so Madam Chair, I will address it through the chair. My question then deals with low-income rate payers. Obviously, we're talking about a multi-year, whatever the percentage is going to be, increase. What are we doing to try and help those that may be on a fixed income and getting close to their ceiling that we're talking about? What are we proposing to do? What are we doing? How are you going to address that issue?
Chair Bronson, Supervisor Valadez, that was actually a conversation we recently had with our wastewater advisory committee, how we can improve upon that subsidy program. We just now have gathered a lot of information. We have approximately 7,000 customers that take advantage of that subsidy program. We do not bill about $1.1 million every year that because of that subsidy program. Now that we have that data in front of us, I think the program is pretty robust and helpful, but I think getting the word out and making sure that everybody is aware of that program is, in my mind, is something that could help enhance the utilization and saving the money for those that need it the most.
Madam Chair, Mr. Huckleberry, I'm a little uncomfortable with the percentage of the increase that's being proposed here. I'll be real honest. Madam Chair, Mr. Huckleberry, I guess I'd like to hear from you or Mr. Jenkins, what could be done if we don't do the full amount? Say we do just by throwing it out, 2 years at 3% increase with a review after the first 2 years.
Madam Chair and Supervisor Valadez, obviously the staff will try to make work what they direct, and what that could be, fine. And what we would have to do is come back and find probably about $1 million in cost cutting, at least in the operating side of the budget, maybe a little more, but that's something obviously we can come back. The ordinance and the rate increases, and while we're suggesting doing multiple to keep the board from coming back, you can do them a year at a time. You can put any cancellation on them. You can change your mind. Basically, about 30 days notice. So I think what we're suggesting is that if you we've recommended what we believe through this process. But if you want to have an alternative, then what we would do is take the alternative and see how it works and come back to the board if there's any issues or discussions or problems. But I think we also need to come back and tell you all the things that each one of you raised too with regard to the status of the utility and what's occurred.
Thank you.
Well, so, Mr. Huckleberry, if I understand, you're saying we could continue this item and then hear back from you about what terms Mr. Valadez just quoted to you might do to us?
Madam Chair and Supervisor, yes.
Okay, I'm fine with that. Because I want to support this, I really do, because I understand the needs and I don't want to go through the same thing that we've gone through before. But with that said, Supervisor Valadez's question about a program for low-income assistance, that's the same baloney that we've heard before from the department. Our program is robust, it works well, and it really doesn't. So I'd like to see some numbers on that, and I'd like to see...
Supervisor Elias, if that doesn't work well, you need to tell them why.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I want to know why, and we need to go back.
Well, you say it doesn't, so can you tell us why it doesn't?
Well, in fact, it doesn't work because, in part, people have to renew their thing every year to make it happen, and that's really hard on people who are disabled or people who are elderly, having to go back and reapply every year for the same amount of subsidy. There's been other problems associated with it in terms of how the word gets out to people? I mean, how many users did you say you have in that program, Jackson?
7,000.
Supervisor Elias, we have almost 7,000 total.
7,000, and how many hookups do we have? How many users do we have?
265,000.
265,000, and 20% of the people in Pima County live in poverty. So, you know what I'm saying? Things don't quite jive there.
Well, some of that's apartment rental, and they may not be paying those costs
Well-
directly to the utility, the individual's renting.
Okay, well, if you don't want to hear more about it, then.
Well, no,
then that's
no, what
fine.
I'm
But I
saying
think
is
we ought to
there
ask
are
them to
circumstances.
analyze their own program and come up with some answers about making it better and making it work better for people.
Oh, I have no objection to that, it's just that the hookup piece is not the whole story.
I understand that.
Mr. Huckleberry, I think the other thing, you can respond to that, and then the facility, the new facilities, the lab.
Yes, and Madam Chair, the question on the new facilities, the build out of the West Campus, where the university is going to lease a portion for 10 years. That was a building that was planned to be expanded and be that large originally, with a phase of us growing into it. The university approached us with regard to housing some of their water quality experts and laboratory staff at the same facility to provide the synergy with regard to research into water quality issues. We do the compliance, and that's why we built the lab. The lab is a compliance laboratory, and it is the only one that's certified in southern Arizona. So what we have done is provide the synergy with the university. We will pay the external cost, they'll pay the internal fitting up the facility, and ultimately turn the whole facility over to us within probably 10 years.
And so as I understand your response, this is actually, we were going to build it to that size to begin with, and so having the university there and actually making some payments to us and outfitting the labs is a cost savings to us, is that right?
It is
Over time.
Madam Chair, it is us using a facility that we're going to need anyway, and then getting the benefit of having associated research done by the university at no cost to us.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Supervisor
I'd
Miller.
like to follow up on that point. You said it was the only certified lab in southern Arizona. What did we use prior to this?
The public labs, the public, it's only certified public lab. Prior to that, we had our own laboratory, and we did the test that we had the capability of doing, and then one of the balance of the work was sent to Phoenix or private contractors.
So overall, are we saving monies? Can we get an analysis of the previous labs, what it cost us, and then a breakdown of what it's costing us for debt plus the reduction in the operating costs that we're getting from the University of Arizona, so that we can look at that? Thank you.
Yes, Madam Chair, and Supervisor Miller, that will be one of the issues. Again, we're going to take whatever you have said and the questions you've raised and provide answers to all of it.
Yeah, Madam Chair. The other thing I'd comment on is that the last time we did sewer rate increases, we had another discussion about a low-income program, and we asked staff to come back with changes. Do you guys remember that? Jackson, you were there, as well as you, John. And I think, if I remember correctly, you worked with Mr. Atha over there in community development in trying to develop a new program, and we didn't, because we said there wasn't any viable way to change it and improve it. Am I correct?
Mr. Chairman, Supervisor Elias, yes, I do recall. I don't recall that we said there was no viable way to change it.
There was some pretty small changes we made, but it really didn't increase anything. And if you would, as you do this analysis, I think it'd be important to take a look at what those changes brought us, to see if in fact we have the robust program that Mr. Jenkins describes.
Thank you, Supervisor Elias. Mr. Huckleberry, it sounds like we're going to continue this item. I could be wrong. I very often am. But will you have this information ready by next week, or how, in terms of the continuance?
Yes, Madam Chair, I would suggest that you continue to either the first or second meeting in April so that we can give a comprehensive response to each of the issues raised by the board.
That's true, but let's let our public member speak, and then we'll go ahead and take action.
Okay, no, I was just about ready to go then, if we're all done questioning Mr. Huckleberry and staff. And Mr. Cohen.
My name is Christopher Cole. I'm from Tucson, Arizona. Big surprise there, right? I'm first vice chair of the Pima County Libertarian Party. I'm speaking on behalf of the Libertarian Party. In his book, Time Enough for Love, Robert Heinlein has the main character, Lazarus Long, born Woodrow Wilson Smith, speak a bunch of short little pithy words of wisdom sayings. They were later collected and published separately as the Notebooks of Lazarus Long. One of those, my favorite, is, "Be wary of strong drink, for it may make you shoot at tax collectors and miss." Pima County has a very high property tax rate. It's in the top 5th of all of the counties or county equivalents in America. There are rich counties that have a wider variety of taxes, but still have a lower tax rate as a percentage of the residents' income than Pima County. And now you're talking about raising the sewer fees, what, 2-3 times the rate of inflation? Yes, I understand, you're trying to catch up from years of neglect. But when you send out the property tax bill, when you send out the sewer fee bill, and various and sundry other fees that have been going up from Pima County, I suggest you include a healthy dose of whiskey or vodka or rum or tequila or moonshine or whatever. I'm not going to say that there's going to be an armed tax revolt, but I think there is a tax revolt on the horizon. You are putting too much of a burden on the residents. And yes, I agree, you're trying to catch up. But Pima County has not recovered from the downturn in the economy. Pima County can't afford it. At least not in conjunction with everything else that the Pima County government is doing to the taxpayers. Not for the taxpayers, but to the taxpayers. So it's good that you're going to continue this. It's good that more studies are going to be done, because as the Board of Supervisors, you have a primary responsibility to manage the money that you take from the taxpayers efficiently. And it doesn't sound like you're doing it.
Thank you. I'd entertain a motion to continue this item until April 14th.
So moved, and if I may also add that we also consult with at least a few social service agencies, including the Pima Council on Aging, to kind of address some of the issues that we're talking about for our low-income residents.
I'll second.
Motion and a second for continuation. Any objection? Hearing none, motion carries. Moving on to the addendum, addendum 1, under contracts and award, health. What's the pleasure of the board on item 1? Well, if we have no objection, we have items 1, 2, and 3. What's the pleasure of the board?
Move the remainder of the addendum.
Motion and a second. Any objection? Hearing none, motion carries. That concludes our business today, our meeting today. So if there are no objections, this meeting stands adjourned.